Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back here with another video. Today, we're here to talk about UFC divisions throughout 2025, and I'm going to be ranking them based on how enjoyable they were. Some divisions, absolute peak, while others, not so much. But I'm going to be ranking every single one of the male divisions. If you guys want to see a video separate for the women's divisions, I'll try to make it, but probably not. So, yeah, without wasting any more time, though. Let's jump right into the video. All right, starting off the list, we got heavyweight. Now, heavyweight to me, I knew it was going to be bad going into 2025. I didn't think it was going to be this bad because this division has somehow failed to meet its low expectations when realistically there are only 2 to 3 fights that I was somewhat excited for to watch. Because right off the bat, we got the John Jones saga where John Jones refused to retire for like 6 months. And we just kind of didn't know what to do with heavyweight for a while, especially for Tom Aspinall, because Tom Aspinall literally beat everybody in the division and now it just doesn't look like John Jones is gonna fight him still. So there's just no point in making any other title fights. But then once John Jones retired in June, Tom Aspinall got promoted to the undisputed champion, and then we were like, oh, finally we get to get rid of John Jones's stain in the heavyweight division by having Tom Aspinall go out there and destroy Cyril Gane in the first round. That is not what happened. What eventually happened was there was a scrap. There was a very fun scrap where Cyril Gane was kind of winning or outpointing Tom Aspinall in the first round, but right at the end of the first round, Cyril Gane eye gouges Tom Aspinall with his dirty fingernails, and now the any momentum and hype for the heavyweight division and Tom Aspinall is just completely dead at this point. The only saving graces about this division were Waldo Cortez Acosta and Walter Walker when he was heel hooking fools nonstop throughout 2025. Outside of that, I don't care about this division at all, especially at the top, because realistically, none of these fights really excite me. Uh, Minus Cyril Gane if he gets rebooked with Tom Aspinall, but I could see the UFC doing Tom Aspinall dirty because they don't like Tom Aspinall in the first place. So heavyweight right now, started off as like is a mid division and then ended up as the worst division in 2025. And going into next year, I'm not really hyped about this division because we don't know when Tom Aspinall is going to come back. We don't know whether or not Volkov or any of the other guys are going to get like a number one contenders fight in the meantime. It just feels like there's just so much logjam that is built up from 2024 and is still going on through 2025 and 2026 moving forward. Moving on, we got light heavyweight. Now, I do believe that light heavyweight is way better than heavyweight by far, but my issue with this division is it honestly feels like nothing really happened in light heavyweight because all six of these guys I have on the screen for you, I feel like they represented the top of the division throughout 2024 and nothing's really changed throughout 2025. Like maybe you can substitute uh, Azamat Mirzakhanov for Jan Blachowicz, but realistically, I do not think Jan Blachowicz was ever going to get to back to a title in the first place after how poorly the UFC treats him. So realistically, like nothing's really changed in terms of the rankings. Like Yuri put on some great fights, but I do not think he's gonna get another title shot against Alex Pereira. Magomed Ankalaev was briefly a champion at the moment, but then Alex Pereira knocked him out in the rematch. So Ankalaev's back to fighting the entire roster before getting another title shot. Khalil Roundtree, like, it was a fun experiment for a while, but eventually he just kind of crumbled in front of Yuri Prohaska in the third round. Carlos Olberg ultimately ruined what was left of Dominic Reyes' hype train, and I can never forgive Carlos Olberg for that. So yeah, realistically, nothing's really changed in 2025. Uh, at least at the top. So while I do think it's a good-ish division, I don't think much has really happened for me to change my opinions uh at the end of 2025. Now moving on though, we got lightweight. Now this might come off as controversial, but to me, lightweight was terrible this year. Like there were so many hyped up fights that we were expecting during 2025, but none of them came about. We had Arman Tsarukyan versus Islam Makhachev to start off the year, and then Arman Tsarukyan um either pulled his back or missed weight. I don't know which one's true to be honest, but he pulled out day before UFC 311, and then Ilya Taporia vacated his heavyweight belt. I'm sorry, featherweight belt to move up to lightweight so he could fight Islam Makhachev for a super fight. That didn't come about, and then we had Paddy Pimblett somehow making it into the top five despite his best win being Michael Chandler. And all of these top guys, minus Charles Oliveira, have only fought once in 2025. Like, some of it is not their fault. Like, Max Holloway, he just fought Dustin Poirier for his retirement fight, and that was just really it. But realistically, like, Gaethje should have fought at least once more, instead of just finishing the year off with a win over Rafa Fiziev. He should have at least fought like maybe against a rematch with Charles Oliveira. We could have seen Paddy Pimblett fight once more, maybe against Charles Oliveira, instead of having Charles Oliveira get slimed out by Ilya Taporia. We could have had Ilya Taporia fight Islam Makhachev, but that ultimately didn't happen. Arman Tsarukyan literally refused to fight Matej Gamrot, like, what, on 6 to 8 weeks notice, because he pulled out of his fight with Islam Makhachev, and he had to make it up for the UFC, but he chose not to until like goddamn November, where he submitted Dan Hooker. Like there was just so much inactivity in the lightweight division throughout 2025, and that honestly ruined it for me, considering the expectations I had for lightweight in 2025. And safe to say, this division ultimately did not deliver on those expectations. All right, now moving on to featherweight. Now, featherweight, I rank about the same as lightweight, but the difference is I did not have nearly as much expectations because when I came into 2025, I thought Ilya Tabor was gonna get one title defense against Diego Lopez and then think about moving up. That's honestly what I thought, but turns out Ilya Taporia vacated, so Volkanovski fought Diego Lopez instead. All right, fair enough. Volkanovski won the belt back. But my main issue is outside of that one fight, nothing really happened at the top. Yair Rodriguez fought Patricio Pitbull and then did nothing for the rest of the year. Movsar Evloev did nothing for the entire year of 2025. Leroy Murphy was actually pretty active. He got that spinning elbow KO over Aaron Pico, but nothing came about that because he's not even getting the next title shot, which we could have set up in December, by the way, but for some reason we didn't. Yusuf Zalal, he's cool. He gets a lot of cool finishes, but he's not really all that hypey because I don't know, just his post fight interviews, it kind of ruins it sometimes. Steve Garcia is pretty cool as well. Like he is dangerous, and I do see him contending for a belt soon, but it's gonna have to wait a little bit. Like he wasn't getting a title shot in 2025 by any means. So it feels like similar to lightweight, the top of the divisions, nothing really played out outside of Leroy Murphy, and the contenders are pretty promising, but they're not gonna get a title shot anytime soon. So I don't know. It just feels very similar. The only difference being I had more expectations for lightweight than featherweight moving into 2025. But at least featherweight didn't let me down like lightweight, which is why I have this fifth on my list. All right, now moving on, we got middleweight. Middleweight, I feel like was peaked throughout the first half of the year. We had DDP as a champion. He's calling out everybody. He's actually fighting everybody. He was relatively active and he put on fun fights, right? But after Chimaev won the belt on August of 2025, all of the hype this division had just vanished into thin air. Because let's be honest, I don't think that many people care for Hamza Chimaev after that fight. Like, you have the same Chimaev fans who have always supported him throughout his entire career. Fair enough, though Glizzy gobble him. But outside of that, there is not much hype regarding Hamza Chimaev in his fights. Like, no one wants to see uh his opponents getting crucifixed for 25 minutes. Fair enough, should his opponents just improve that much? Yes, but at the same time, though, can Chimaev actually finish DDP when he has him crucified for 21 minutes? So that was my overall take on that fight. And then subsequently after, it's like, even if we got good fights at middleweight, again, it's just like at the end of the day, like, oh, who beats Chimaev? That's what it ultimately came down to with middleweight. Like in Mavov, he had a pretty fun fight with Caio Borralho. I'm not gonna say the most entertaining of all time, but still, it was a pretty fun scrap. Yet there's no hype for him because, you know, is he gonna beat Chimaev? Probably not. Anthony Hernandez literally dog walked Roman Dolidze. And I understand it's Roman Dolidze, but the way Anthony Hernandez dog walked Roman Dolidze was absolute cinema. But at the end of the day, there's no hype for it because can he beat Chimaev? Probably not. Brendan Allen, he got a crazy upset win over Rainer de Ritter at October of 2025. But am I really hyped for a Brendan Allen possible title shot? No, because can he beat Chimaev? Probably not. And that's what it simply comes down to. Middleweight's just, can this guy pose a challenge to Hamza Chimaev? Does this guy not get crucifixed for 25 minutes? Probably not. So that's my overall take on middleweight. Like, it started off great when DDP was the champ. He was having fun scraps consistently. But after Chimaev won the belt in the fashion that he did, I don't think that many people care for middleweight anymore. Moving on, though, we got welterweight. Now, welterweight, I could argue is number one because when this division is absolutely peak, it's the best division around. Right? When JDM beat Bilal Muhammad, that was so peak. When Carlos Prates knocked out Leon Edwards, that was absolute peak to me. When Michael Morales got a crazy upset win over Sean Brady, that was absolute peak. When Sean Brady ragdolled Leon Edwards for 4 rounds, again, absolute peak. But my problem with this division is that the lows are too many. For every time we got a JDM beat Bilal, we got a Makashev beating JDM in the fashion that he did. Right? I want to make that very clear. I'm not hating on Makashev for winning the belt. It's just again the way that he did it. I was like, oh god damn it, man. That was my overall take on that fight. We also have for every Carlos Prates knockout, we had Ian Gary beating Carlos Prates. Safe to say I didn't want that to happen, but it unfortunately did. We also had Kamaru Usman beating Joaquin Buckley by smudging him for 4 rounds. Again, not the results I wanted. Shavkat Rakhmonov didn't even fight this year. The highs were high, but the lows were just incredibly low. It made me appreciate the highs more, but at the same time, more like I feel like I was more frustrated with this division than I was excited for throughout 2025. But this division is very good, and I do believe that it's gonna continue to being good moving forward. Up next, we got bantamweight. Now, bantamweight, I did not expect much out of this year. Honestly, going into 2025, I thought that Umar Nurmagomedov is gonna beat Merab in a very close fight, and then he's gonna fight one more time in Abu Dhabi, and then nobody would care about this division. That was my honest take regarding bantamweight. But what we ended up getting was Merab Dvalishvili going on a generational run, beating the likes of Umar Nurmagomedov in a very fun fight. He ragdolled Sean O'Malley in a rematch. Then he beat up Corey Sandhagen, right, in a very fun fashion. But then to top it off, Merab attempted to go for 4 title defenses. Peter Yan stole the show by putting on a 50-45 masterclass to end off bantamweight in 2025. I mean, that's absolute peak cinema right there. Peter Yan is now the UFC champion of the bantamweight division once more. Not only that, it also opens up the division moving forward. So I appreciate Marab for what he has done throughout 2025, carrying the bantamweight division behind his back throughout the year. And now that we see competitive fights with Marab, I can honestly say that Peter Yan and the rest of the division, not only did they do very well in 2025, they might end up being the best division moving forward over the next 2 to 3 years. Last but not least, we got flyweight. I think flyweight was the best division of 2025 by far because every single top flyweight came out to scrap this year. Brandon Royval and Joshua Van had a fight of the year. Manel Cap starched out Brandon Royval right after, and prior to that, he beat the crap out of Asu Amabayev. Tatsuro Taira, he's on a two-fight win streak in 2025, and now he's potentially the number one contender. I mean, it kind of depends on what the UFC does. I will say though, the way Joshua Van won the belt against Pantoja, where Pantoja basically just broke his arm as he's like falling over, kind of sucks. But the rest of the division was absolute peak cinema. I mean, we even had Kyoji Horiguchi beating the piss out of Tagir Ulanbekov for 3 rounds straight. I mean, what's not to love about flyweight right now? So I think throughout 2025, there wasn't much hype around flyweight. Honestly, people were saying, "Oh, Pantoja is probably gonna just dominate the division," but no, the contenders are really good. Like they are so good. Even though Pantoja is an all-time great flyweight himself, and I think this was by far the best division overall throughout 2025. And this is honestly going to be 1A and 1B to bantamweight moving forward for the next couple of years. All right, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize this channel. Otherwise, though, leave comments down below how you feel about 2025 as well as all of the divisions that we talked about, and give me your opinions on how you would rank each one of them. But otherwise though, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.